My husband went on a honeymoon without me, only with his family, and when I went on vacation, they started judging me. Hey everyone, I need to get this off my chest because I feel like I've been living in a nightmare. I don't even know where to begin, so I guess I'll start with the beginning, my wedding. Or, as I like to call it, the event that had nothing to do with me. I'm Ashley, 31, and a few months ago, I married Ethan, 32. I should have been the happiest person alive, right? I should have felt like the most beautiful woman in the world, celebrating love with my husband and our closest friends and family. Instead, I felt like a prop. From the moment Ethan proposed, his family took over. His mother, Diane, is the kind of woman who thrives on control. She has this way of making everything seem like she's doing it for you when really, she's just making sure everything is for her. At first, I thought she was just excited. I mean, it's her son's wedding. Of course, she'd want to be involved. But then I started noticing little things. She suggested venues before I even had a chance to look at any. And by suggested, I mean she booked 3 appointments before I even knew what was happening. She helped pick out the invitations by ordering them without my input. She guided my dress selection by telling the boutique employees what styles I'd be trying on. At first, I tried to push back. I really did. I wanted a small wedding, something intimate, with just our close friends and immediate family. Ethan and I had talked about it so many times. But Diane? She had other plans. She wanted a big, elaborate event, the kind of wedding that would make people talk. She kept saying things like, "Oh honey, trust me, you'll thank me later. You don't want to look cheap." Or, "Sweetheart, this is the kind of wedding people dream about." I would look at Ethan, expecting him to back me up, to tell her that this wasn't what we wanted. But every single time, he'd just smile and say, "It's not a big deal, Ash. My mom's just trying to help." I should have known then. When it came time to choose my bridesmaids, I picked my best friends, Lisa, Emily, and my cousin, Natalie. I wanted them to wear something they felt comfortable in, but Diane had different ideas. She told me I had to include Ethan's sister, Caroline, as my maid of honor. I barely even liked Caroline. She was snobby, entitled, and treated me like I was just some girl her brother happened to be marrying. But Diane insisted. It would mean the world to her. "And to Ethan," she said. And Ethan? He just nodded along. So there I was, with a maid of honor I didn't even want. And if that wasn't enough, Diane chose the bridesmaid dresses herself. Ugly, pale champagne-colored things that washed everyone out. She even picked out my wedding dress. I had one day to go dress shopping for myself. I found this gorgeous, simple, elegant gown. I loved it. But before I could even buy it, Diane accidentally ordered a different one that was covered in lace, sequins, and a massive train that made me feel like I was drowning in fabric. "Oh, Ashley, this one is so much better. The other one was too plain," she gushed, clapping her hands together. I wanted to scream. "And Ethan?" He said, "Babe, it's a dress. You're going to look beautiful no matter what." I felt like I was suffocating. Fast forward to the actual wedding day. I should have been excited. I should have felt like a bride. Instead, I felt like a guest at a wedding that wasn't even mine. The venue? Some enormous, gaudy ballroom Diane had picked because it looked regal. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't intimate. It was cold and impersonal. The flowers? Not the soft pastels I wanted. No, Diane had ordered red and gold arrangements because they look expensive. The guest list? Instead of the 60 people Ethan and I wanted, there were over 200 guests, most of whom I didn't even know. And then there was the seating arrangement. I had wanted my parents, who had flown in from out of state, to be right up front. But when I got to the reception, I found out that Diane had moved them to the back so her friends could have a better view. When I confronted her, she smiled and said, "Oh, don't be silly. It's all the same." "Ethan?" He shrugged and said, "It's just seating, babe. Don't let it ruin your night." I wanted to cry. But the real cherry on top? When it came time for the first dance, the song I had picked, our song, the one that had been special to us for years, wasn't played. Instead, a completely different song came on. One that I hated. One that I later found out was Diane and her husband's wedding song. She had changed it behind my back. And when I turned to Ethan, shocked and hurt, you know what he did? He laughed. "Oh, come on, babe. It's a great song. Just go with it." I couldn't believe it. I had been erased from my own wedding. By the time the cake cutting rolled around, I was done. I wanted to leave. The cake? It wasn't even the flavor I picked. It was some extravagant, 5-tier monstrosity that looked like it belonged at a royal banquet. I didn't even recognize my own wedding anymore. And then, As if the universe wanted to crush me even further, I overheard Diane talking to one of her friends. Oh, I just couldn't let Ashley ruin it with her tacky taste. Can you imagine? She wanted something simple. Thank God I stepped in. That was it. That was my breaking point. I didn't even care anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked out. Right there, in the middle of my own wedding reception, I took off my heels, grabbed my purse, and left. And the best part? No one even noticed for a solid 10 minutes. When Ethan finally found me outside, sitting on the curb in my big, suffocating wedding dress, he had the audacity to ask, "What's wrong?" I looked at him, at this man who had let his mother steamroll me for months, who had let me be humiliated at my own wedding, and I realized something. This wasn't my marriage. This wasn't our life. This was Diane's world, and I was just an accessory. So I took a deep breath and said the words that changed everything. "Ethan, I don't think I can do this." And just like that, my wedding night became the night I started planning my escape. I woke up the morning after my wedding, not in a honeymoon suite overlooking the ocean, not wrapped in the arms of the man I just vowed to spend my life with, but alone in our house, cold, empty, and suffocatingly silent. For a moment, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the whirlwind of a nightmare that had been my wedding. The fake smiles, the forced laughter, the guests I barely knew, the wedding dress I hadn't picked, the music I hadn't chosen, the overwhelming presence of Ethan's mother, Diane, dictating every little detail as if she was the bride. I turned my head, expecting to see Ethan sleeping beside me, but the bed was empty. I frowned, sitting up. The house was eerily quiet. The clock on my nightstand read 8:47 a.m. Something felt off. I slid out of bed, grabbing a robe and walking barefoot down the hallway. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen, and for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, Ethan had woken up early to make me breakfast. Maybe he felt guilty for everything that had happened yesterday. Maybe he wanted to make it up to me. I turned the corner and saw him standing in the kitchen, dressed in khaki shorts, a Hawaiian shirt, and flip-flops, pouring coffee into a to-go cup. His suitcase sat by the door. My stomach dropped. "Ethan?" My voice came out hoarse. He looked up and smiled like everything was normal. "Hey, babe, you're up?" I was just about to leave. Leave? I blinked, my brain struggling to catch up. "Where are you going?" He had the audacity to look confused. "The honeymoon." I felt my knees go weak. I gripped the kitchen counter. "The honeymoon? Without me?" His face scrunched up, like he was trying to figure out how to explain something simple to a child. "Yeah, didn't my mom tell you?" I felt like I'd been sucker punched. "Tell me what?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Okay, so, slight change of plans. The Maldives trip is still happening, but it's more of a family vacation now." I stared at him. "A family vacation?" "Yeah. My parents and Caroline are coming, along with a few of my cousins. It'll be fun. You know how much my mom loves family time." I could hear blood rushing in my ears. I felt like the room was tilting. "You're leaving me here? Alone?" "Oh, it's just 2 weeks," he said casually, taking a sip of his coffee. "Mom thought it would be a good idea for you to stay home, get the house organized, settle in." She thought. I cut myself off before I screamed. My fingers dug into the counter. "You agreed to this?" "Babe, don't be dramatic. It's just a little vacation." He gave me a patronizing smile and leaned in to kiss my forehead. I jerked away. He sighed, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Look, I don't get why you're upset. You've been so stressed about the wedding, and I figured you'd appreciate some time to yourself. You can relax, do some decorating. The guest room still needs work." I stared at him in complete and utter disbelief. "You're seriously just leaving me here to take care of your house while you go on our honeymoon with your mother?" He frowned. "It's our house, Ashley, and I don't get why you're making such a big deal about this. You know how much my mom and dad have done for us. They paid for the wedding that I hated." I snapped. He rolled his eyes. "Jesus, Ash, you're being ridiculous. It was a beautiful wedding, and my mom put so much effort into making it special. You could at least show some appreciation." I felt something inside me snap. I turned around, walked straight to the coffee pot, and threw my mug across the room. It shattered against the wall, coffee splattering everywhere. Ethan jumped back, eyes wide. "What the hell? You're abandoning me on our honeymoon," I hissed. "To go on a vacation with your mother. And you expect me to stay here and play housewife?" He let out an exasperated sigh. "I'm not abandoning you. You're just overreacting. Jesus, why are you being so selfish?" I felt like my brain had short-circuited. I'm selfish? Yes. You're making this all about you when my mom and dad have done so much for us. You should be grateful. And honestly, maybe this time apart will help you cool off. I laughed. A sharp, bitter laugh that felt foreign coming from my own mouth. You mean it'll help your mom make sure I don't have any say in our marriage? His face hardened. Look, Ash, this isn't up for debate. I'm leaving in an hour. I'd love for you to be happy for me when I get back. And then he turned, picked up his suitcase, and walked out the door. I stood there, frozen, listening as his car pulled out of the driveway. I was alone. I sank to the floor, shaking with rage, humiliation, and a deep, gnawing feeling that I had just made the biggest mistake of my life by marrying this man. And yet, a small part of me knew something for certain. I was not going to sit here, twiddling my thumbs, waiting for my husband to return from my stolen honeymoon. I was done playing by Diane's rules. I sat on the cold kitchen floor for what felt like hours, staring at the spot where Ethan had stood, where he had spoken to me like I was some ungrateful child throwing a tantrum instead of his wife, the woman he had sworn to love and cherish. My fingers were still shaking from the sheer rage coursing through me, but the initial shock was starting to fade, replaced by something colder, something sharper. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. And I sure as hell wasn't going to beg. I was going to do something Ethan would never expect. I picked myself up, my mind already working faster than my emotions could catch up. I grabbed my phone off the counter and checked the time. It was 11:13 a.m. If I moved quickly, I could be on a plane by tonight. But not just any plane. Not to some cheap hotel a few hours away. No, I was going to go somewhere I'd always dreamed of, somewhere that screamed freedom. French Polynesia. Ethan had taken my honeymoon and turned it into a family trip for his mother. So I was taking my honeymoon back. I moved fast, booking the first available ticket to Bora Bora, a luxury resort, overwater bungalow included. It was expensive, insanely expensive, but I didn't care. If Ethan thought I was going to sit around and wait for him to come back from his little vacation, he had another thing coming. The flight left at 9:45 p.m. That gave me just under 10 hours to pack, leave a note, and disappear. Packing was easy. I didn't need much: bathing suits, summer dresses, my passport, my laptop, and a few essentials. Every movement felt surreal, like I was floating outside of myself, watching a different version of me do something so uncharacteristically bold. This wasn't the Ashley who had spent months being walked over by her in-laws. This wasn't the Ashley who had been erased from her own wedding. This was someone new. I grabbed a piece of paper and a pen. I wasn't going to write some emotional letter. No long explanations. No desperate pleas. Just something simple. Ethan, since you decided to take a honeymoon without me, I decided to take one without you. Enjoy your vacation. Ashley. I folded the note neatly and placed it on the kitchen counter where he'd left his coffee mug that morning. Then I walked out of the house and never looked back. The airport was packed, but I barely noticed. Every step forward felt lighter, like I was shedding the weight of my marriage with every breath. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not my friends, not my family. I didn't need permission. For the first time in months, I was doing something just for me. The flight was long, nearly 12 hours, but I barely slept. My mind raced with everything that had happened, replaying the past few weeks like a movie I never wanted to watch again. I thought of Diane's smug face as she controlled my wedding. I thought of Ethan's bored, dismissive tone as he told me to be grateful for a wedding I hated. I thought of my parents, pushed to the back of my own reception. I thought of the moment Ethan stood in our kitchen and told me, without a single ounce of hesitation, that I was not a priority in my own marriage. By the time we landed, something inside me had changed. The moment I stepped off the plane and felt the warm, salty breeze of Bora Bora, I knew I had made the right decision. The airport was small, almost intimate, surrounded by crystal-clear blue waters and lush green mountains. I could already hear the ocean, the sound of waves crashing against the shore. A resort driver greeted me at arrivals, a broad-shouldered man in his mid-30s with an easy smile. "Welcome to paradise," he said, handing me a cool towel and a drink. "First time here?" I nodded, letting the moment sink in. "Yeah, first time anywhere, actually." The boat ride to the resort was unreal. The water was so clear I could see the fish swimming beneath us. The sky was an endless stretch of blue, the kind that didn't feel real. When we finally arrived at the resort, I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. The bungalow was straight out of a dream. A thatched roof paradise standing over the ocean, with glass floors, a private deck, and absolute silence. No Diane. No Caroline. No suffocating expectations. Just me. The moment the doors shut behind me, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I had done it. I had left. And for the first time in months, I felt alive. That night, I sat on my private deck, feet dangling over the water, sipping a glass of champagne. My phone buzzed next to me. Ethan, 13 missed calls. Ethan, where the hell are you? Ethan, what kind of sick joke is this? Ethan, Ashley, call me right now. I ignored him, taking another sip of champagne. Then another message popped up. From Caroline, wow. My mom was right about you. You are a selfish, ungrateful son of a bit *H. I snorted. Unbelievable. A few minutes later, another text came through. Diane, you have embarrassed this family. I always knew you weren't the right fit for Ethan. I laughed, actually laughed, as I blocked her number. Then I stood up, stretched, and walked straight into the ocean, letting the warm water wash away the last remnants of my old life. Ethan and his family could think whatever they wanted. I didn't care anymore. I was free. When I landed back in the U.S. after my impulsive escape to Bora Bora, I wasn't entirely sure what my next move would be. All I knew was that I wasn't going back to that house, the one Ethan and his mother treated like their personal museum, where I was just some insignificant decoration. So instead of returning to the life I had been forced into, I did something unexpected. I went home. Not to the house Ethan and I were supposed to build our future in, but to my real home. My parents' estate in Miami, a sprawling villa overlooking the ocean, the kind of place that felt like a 5-star resort. Growing up, I had always taken it for granted. Now, stepping through the tall glass doors, feeling the cool air conditioning hit my sun-kissed skin, I felt something I hadn't in months. Relief. My mother, Vivian, was the first to react. She gasped when she saw me standing in the doorway, still in the flowy white sundress I had bought in Bora Bora, my hair messy from the ocean breeze. Ashley. The next thing I knew, her arms were around me, warm and firm. I hadn't realized how badly I needed that hug until it happened. She pulled back, searching my face. What's wrong? What happened? Behind her, my father, Richard, stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Unlike my mother, he didn't rush toward me. He just stared, waiting for an explanation. I sighed, feeling the weight of the past few weeks press down on me. Can we talk somewhere private? We sat in the sunroom, the glass walls giving us an unobstructed view of the waves rolling onto the shore. I took a deep breath and told them everything. The wedding that wasn't mine. The honeymoon that wasn't mine. The husband who had left me behind like an afterthought. By the time I finished, my mother was practically vibrating with anger. That witch, she hissed, referring to Diane. I always knew she was controlling, but this? And Ethan? What kind of man lets his wife be treated like that? My father hadn't said a word the entire time. He just sat there, hands steepled, eyes narrowed in that way that used to terrify me as a child. When I was done, he finally spoke. You're not going back to him. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. And for the first time, I realized I didn't want to go back. So I didn't. Instead, I did something that would have infuriated Ethan and his mother. I enjoyed my honeymoon. For 3 weeks, I lived in absolute luxury. My parents' home was its own private paradise, a sprawling white villa with high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, and an infinity pool that stretched out toward the ocean. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of the waves, not Ethan's dismissive voice telling me I was overreacting. I spent my days lounging on the beach, letting the sun kiss my skin while I sipped cocktails brought to me by the estate's staff. I let myself melt into the comfort of spa treatments, massages, facials, deep soak baths in rose petals and essential oils. Every moment felt like a rebellion, a direct defiance of the prison I had been living in with Ethan. And the best part? I never once checked my phone. Ethan had been calling, of course. Dozens of missed calls and messages, at first demanding an explanation, then angrily accusing me of humiliating him. Ethan, where the hell are you? This isn't funny. Ethan, you're embarrassing me. Do you have any idea what my family is saying? Ethan, Ashley, you're acting like a spoiled brat. You need to come home. Ethan, fine. If you want to act like a child, do whatever you want. But don't expect me to wait around for you forever. I blocked his number after that. And Diane? She tried her best to guilt-trip me. Diane, you're being incredibly selfish, young lady. This marriage is bigger than just you. You have responsibilities as Ethan's wife. Diane, I tried to give you the wedding of your dreams, and this is how you repay us? Diane, you're an embarrassment to our family. I blocked her, too. And as the days stretched on, something inside me shifted. I had spent so much time bending to the will of Ethan and his family, so much time being erased, that I had forgotten what it felt like to just exist for me. One afternoon, while I was lounging by the pool, sipping a cocktail and flipping through a book, my mother sat beside me, adjusting her oversized sun hat. "So," she said casually, "have you decided what you're going to do?" I glanced at her over my sunglasses. "What do you mean?" She waved a hand. "With Ethan. With the marriage. With your life." I hesitated, swirling the ice in my glass. "I don't know yet." She nodded, as if she had expected that answer. "Just make sure that whatever you decide, you're choosing it for you. Not because you feel obligated. Not because you're scared of what people will think. Not because someone else expects it." For so long, my entire life had been dictated by what other people expected of me. And now, for the first time, I had a choice. By the third week, something became painfully clear. Ethan had never really loved me. Not in the way a husband should love his wife. Oh, he had loved the idea of me. The role I played in his life. The way I fit neatly into the picture his mother had painted for him. But my feelings? My wants? My dreams? They had never mattered. I had spent months excusing his behavior, convincing myself that he was just caught between his mother and me, that he wasn't actively choosing to let Diane trample over my existence. But that was a lie. He had chosen. Every single time, he had chosen her. The wedding? He let Diane control every detail. The honeymoon? He let Diane turn it into a family vacation. The marriage? He had expected me to fall in line, to be grateful, to obey. And when I finally stood up for myself, he called me selfish. Lying on the beach, staring out at the endless stretch of ocean, I made a decision. I wasn't going back. I had spent too long trying to be the perfect wife to a man who didn't care about me. Now, I was going to be something else. I was going to be free. I woke up to my phone vibrating nonstop. The moment I turned it on, it felt like I had opened the gates to hell. Hundreds of messages, calls, notifications. Ethan, his family, his friends, even random people I barely knew. I barely had time to blink before the first few messages flooded in. At first, they were just angry. "How could you do this to Ethan? You humiliated your husband and his entire family. Selfish, ungrateful bitch." Then they got more aggressive. "You better fix this before it's too late. Women like you need to be taught a lesson. Watch your back, whore." I stared at the screen, completely numb. I knew Ethan would be mad. I was expecting that. What I wasn't expecting was a full-blown public execution of my character. The worst part? Ethan had clearly been feeding people his version of events. From what I could piece together, he had gone to his friends, his family, his entire social circle and made it seem like I had just gone insane. Like I had abandoned him without reason, humiliated him, and shamed his family by running away instead of fulfilling my duties as a wife. His friends were already running with it. Some women don't deserve good men. Disrespecting family traditions has consequences. A wife's duty is to support her husband, not run away like a spoiled child. Some of them even tagged me. Others posted pictures from the wedding with captions like, "A shame she turned out like this." I scrolled through, unfazed. I had spent months being erased, controlled, dismissed, and made to feel like an afterthought. Their words didn't hurt me. They just pissed me off. But then, of course, there were the threats. "You think you can humiliate our family and get away with it? You better fix this before we make you regret it. You should be scared. Real scared." I forwarded the worst ones to my dad's assistant, knowing she would handle it. My father wasn't just rich. He had connections. The kind that made people disappear when they crossed the wrong line. Then I checked Ethan's messages. At first, he was furious. "You have no idea what you've done. I've had to explain to everyone why my wife disappeared like a lunatic in the middle of our marriage. You embarrass me beyond belief, Ashley. Fix this now." Then he started guilt-tripping me. "Ashley, please. Just talk to me. Let's fix this. I love you. We can get through this. You're my wife. We belong together." And finally, the command. "Be an adult. Apologize and come home." I let out an actual laugh. Apologize? To him? For what? For refusing to be treated like a goddamn accessory in my own life? I turned my phone off, tossed it onto the bed, and went to get breakfast. A few hours later, my mom knocked on my bedroom door, holding her phone out with a frown. "You need to see this." I took it, already exhausted before even looking. It was a video. I pressed play. It was Ethan, sitting on the couch in what used to be our home, looking sad and defeated. His voice was low, his expression one of heartbreak. "I never thought I'd be the guy whose wife just leaves," he said, shaking his head. "I don't know what I did to deserve this." The comments were flooded with support. "You poor thing. She doesn't deserve you. You did everything right, Ethan. A real wife wouldn't have abandoned her family." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. This wasn't just damage control. He was playing the victim. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't taking responsibility. He was milking this for sympathy. And it was working. My mom sighed. "He's turning this into a public pity party. The more you ignore it, the worse it's going to get." I knew she was right, but I also knew Ethan. He was waiting. He thought I would break. He thought the pressure, the messages, the social fallout, all of it, would push me into crawling back. He thought he could control me through shame. And that's when I realized something. Ethan didn't just want me to come back. He wanted to win. This was about power. And I refused to lose. The next morning, I posted a statement. Short, direct, unapologetic. I didn't leave my marriage. I left a situation where I was ignored, disrespected, and treated as less than. Ethan knows exactly why. He's just hoping you don't ask him. Then I turned my phone off and let the world burn. Ethan lost his mind. The second my statement went up, I started getting messages from his family, his friends, even random acquaintances demanding I take it down. His mother called me a liar. His sister called me a whore. His friends started posting that I was just trying to ruin a good man's reputation. But the best part? People started asking questions. If she left without warning, why was she unhappy? If Ethan did nothing wrong, why didn't she want to go on her honeymoon? If she's lying, why won't Ethan say what actually happened? Suddenly, the narrative wasn't as clean as Ethan wanted. Suddenly, people were doubting him. And that's when the final message came through. "Enough, Ashley. This has gone too far. You're my wife. This isn't a game. Come home and apologize, or there will be consequences." Consequences. A chill ran down my spine. Ethan had never outright threatened me before. Not like this. I didn't know what he meant, but I knew one thing. I was never going back. A few days after I dropped my statement and watched the online circus that followed, I was still trying to wrap my head around everything that had happened. The drama, the endless messages, and, of course, Ethan's pathetic attempt at turning himself into the victim. But even though I'd put it all out there, it felt like I was missing a piece of the puzzle. It was like there was a curtain I couldn't quite pull back. That's when I got an unexpected message. From Melissa, Ethan's ex-girlfriend. I barely knew anything about her, to be honest. Ethan had always dismissed their relationship as something that just didn't work out, and he never talked much about it. I'd seen a picture or two of them on Facebook, but that was the extent of it. When I first saw her name pop up on my phone, I almost ignored it. After everything that had happened, I was done with surprises. But something told me to open it. "Hey, Ashley, this is kind of weird, but I've been following what's going on, and I think you should hear some things. If you're up for it, I'd be willing to chat." "Up to you." I hesitated. Did I really want to open that can of worms? Then I thought about the threats Ethan had been sending me, the manipulation, the public spectacle he'd made out of everything, and I figured, why not? I had nothing to lose. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop, somewhere neutral. I got there early, nerves on edge, wondering what she would be like. Was she reaching out to help? Or was she another one of Diane's cronies, here to guilt-trip me into going back? She arrived a few minutes later, dressed in jeans and a simple top, with an air of calm that I couldn't quite place. As she approached, she gave me a small, reassuring smile. "Ashley," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Melissa." "Hey," I replied, shaking her hand. "Thanks for reaching out." We got our drinks and found a quiet corner. I tried not to seem too eager, but I was dying to hear what she had to say. "So," I said, leaning in, "what's this about?" I honestly didn't expect to hear from Ethan's ex in the middle of all this. She nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. "Yeah, I know it's weird, but when I saw what was happening, I couldn't just sit back and watch. It brought up a lot of stuff for me, and I felt like you deserved to know." "Know what?" I asked, my heart starting to race a little. "Basically, that this isn't new," she said. "Ethan? His family? They've done this before. A lot. You're not the first one they've tried to control like this." I stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "Wait, what do you mean? They've done this to someone else?" She took a deep breath, and I could see the tension in her shoulders, like she'd been carrying this around for a long time. "Yeah, they did it to me. And from what I've heard, to a couple of women before me, too. It's like a pattern with them. I just didn't realize it until it was too late." I sat back in my chair, Stunned? Ethan never mentioned any of that. Melissa gave me a wry smile. Of course he didn't. He wants to look like the perfect guy, right? Like he's got it all together, and it's always the other person who's at fault. But his mom? Diane? She's the one pulling the strings. Always has been. She paused, as if deciding how much to share. When Ethan and I were dating, everything seemed fine at first. He was sweet, attentive, you know? The kind of guy who makes you feel like you're the only one in the world. But the minute things started to get serious, Diane got involved. God, I muttered, shaking my head. That sounds exactly like what happened to me. Yeah, well, it's their MO, Melissa said, rolling her eyes. She starts off being super nice, making you feel welcome. And then slowly, she starts pushing, telling you what's best for Ethan, what he needs, what you should do to fit into their family. It's all subtle at first, but it gets more intense. And if you don't fall in line, that's when the real manipulation starts. I leaned in, feeling a strange mix of anger and relief. So it wasn't just me. I'm not crazy. No, you're definitely not crazy, she said with a sympathetic look. Diane tried to get me to change who I was, told me how I should dress, what kind of job would be appropriate for Ethan's girlfriend. And Ethan? He just went along with it. Every time. Never stood up for me. Anytime I brought it up, he'd say I was overreacting, or that his mom was just trying to help. I felt a surge of bitter recognition. That's exactly what he said to me. Yup, textbook Ethan. And if you do push back, she sighed, staring down into her coffee, then suddenly you're difficult. You're not family material. And Ethan won't defend you, because he's never learned to stand on his own 2 feet. Everything has to be approved by Diane. Everything. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I'd spent so much time questioning myself, wondering if I'd done something wrong. Now, here was Melissa, confirming that the entire dynamic was twisted, and it wasn't just in my head. Did they ever? I started, but she cut me off. Yeah, they threatened me, too. Not as badly as they're threatening you now, but they made it clear that if I didn't behave, I wasn't welcome. And Ethan? He didn't just stand by, he actually believed them. Like, if his mom said I was being difficult, then that was the truth as far as he was concerned. So how did it end? I asked, feeling an uneasy mix of curiosity and dread. She gave me a small, sad smile. I walked. Like you did. But I didn't do it as dramatically, she said, almost laughing. I tried to reason with Ethan first, but that didn't get me anywhere. He kept saying I just needed to understand his family better. When I realized he was never going to put me first, I left. Moved out in the middle of the night. It was messy, but it was the best decision I ever made. God, I muttered, shaking my head. I thought it was me. I thought maybe I wasn't cut out for this whole marriage thing. It's not you, she said firmly. It's them. It's the whole damn family dynamic. Diane doesn't want Ethan to have a wife. She wants him to have a puppet. And Ethan? He's too scared to do anything but go along with it. They'll chew up anyone who gets in their way. Hearing her say all of this, things I had felt but couldn't quite articulate, was like finally seeing a picture come into focus. I wasn't alone. I wasn't imagining it. This was real. Thank you, I said, feeling a wave of gratitude. Thank you for telling me this. I don't even know what I'm going to do yet, but thank you. I needed to hear it. Melissa smiled, and I could see a glimmer of the strength she must have found in herself to get out of that mess. You're welcome. And whatever you do, just know it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. Don't let them make you feel like you're the problem. Because you're not. We finished our coffee, and she left me with one last piece of advice. Don't let them get into your head. They're experts at that. Just trust yourself. As she walked out of the cafe, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Clarity. I wasn't going to be another casualty of the Ethan-Diane power duo. I was done with the lies, the manipulation, and the constant feeling that I was the one who needed to change. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had my feet firmly on the ground. I wasn't going to let Ethan and his family control me, define me, or drag me back into their toxic mess. Whatever came next, I was ready. And this time, I was fighting for me. I woke up knowing the night before had changed everything. Ethan had finally snapped in public, showing everyone exactly who he was. The controlled, polished version of him had cracked, and what was underneath was exactly what I had been dealing with for months. Now, there were witnesses. No more pretending, no more spinning his own version of events without pushback. He had exposed himself. The party had started out fine. It was a charity gala hosted by my friend Olivia, full of wealthy donors, business executives, and socialites. It wasn't the kind of event Ethan would normally attend, but that didn't matter anymore. Since I left, he had made it his personal mission to track me down, whether it was through direct confrontation or sending his flying monkeys after me. That night was no different. I had been standing by the bar, laughing with Olivia and a few others, when I heard his voice cut through the chatter like a knife. There she is. My wife. The second I turned and saw him, I knew this was going to be bad. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened, and he was gripping a glass of whiskey so tightly it looked like it might shatter. People started whispering, eyes darting between us as he stormed toward me, his expression twisted with rage. How long, Ashley? He spat. How long were you screwing someone else before you left me? The room went silent. Even the waiters froze, unsure if they should keep moving or back away. I felt Olivia tense beside me. I exhaled slowly, keeping my face neutral. You're drunk, I said, shaking my head. Go home. He let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I'm the problem? You abandoned our marriage, humiliated me, and now you're standing here acting like I'm the bad guy? I kept my voice calm. Ethan, I left because your mother controls your entire life, and you let her. I left because I refused to be treated like a doormat. And now, you're making a complete fool of yourself in public. Just leave. You're a liar, he hissed. A selfish, manipulative, cheating liar. Security stepped in. Two men in black suits grabbed Ethan's arms. Sir, you need to leave. He yanked his arms back. You're all seriously taking her side? He turned his attention back to me, eyes burning with hatred. You'll regret this, Ashley. I swear to God you will. I picked up my drink and took a slow sip, watching as security dragged him toward the exit. Olivia let out a low whistle. Jesus, that was psychotic. I set my glass down and smirked. Yeah, but now? I have everything I need. The next morning, I woke up early and grabbed my phone. Ethan had made his biggest mistake yet. I had been patient, given him every chance to make this divorce clean. But now, I was done. I scrolled through my contacts, found Diane's number, and hit call. She answered on the second ring, her voice dripping with fake concern. Ashley, how lovely of you to call. I assume you're ready to stop this nonsense and come home. I smiled to myself. Oh, Diane, you really don't get it, do you? She sighed, like she was tired of dealing with me. Ashley, dear, let's be reasonable. You're making a spectacle of yourself. You've already humiliated my son and our family. If you just apologize, I'm sure we can work something out. I let out a soft laugh. Oh, we're definitely going to work something out. Just not in the way you're hoping. There was a pause. What is that supposed to mean? I leaned back on my bed, twirling a pin between my fingers. It means that I'm done playing this game. It means that your psychotic son showed up at a public event last night and falsely accused me of cheating in front of dozens of witnesses. It means that I now have evidence of harassment, defamation, and emotional distress. It means that if Ethan doesn't sign the divorce papers by the end of the week, I will be suing your entire family for damages. Silence. Then, a sharp intake of breath. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I would, I said, my voice light and amused. And I have a team of lawyers who would love to turn this into a public trial. Imagine that, Diane. Imagine your family name dragged through the mud. Imagine your reputation. What will all your high society friends think? What will your precious image look like when people start digging into the way your family has treated women for years? She exhaled sharply, her voice lower now. Ashley, let's not get carried away. This is a private matter. I laughed. It was a private matter until Ethan made it public. Until you let him turn this into some deranged revenge plot. I gave you every chance to walk away quietly. Now, you have one more chance. If I don't have those signed papers by Friday, my next call will be to my legal team. And trust me, Diane, you won't win. Her voice turned ice cold. You are a vindictive little girl. No, I said, smiling. I'm just done letting you control me. I hung up before she could say anything else. I set my phone down, stretched my arms over my head, and let out a deep, satisfied breath. For the first time in a long, long time, I felt completely, unshakably free.